Welcome to a new story for a new week. My name is Will Rand, and on behalf of Earth Story, I am delighted to welcome you to this space. We at Earth Story believe two things: that every person on this planet was born with a story to share and a creative gift to offer.
I'd been to old growth woodland forest before, but I think now I knew who they were, so I could recognize
What
them
I'm
better.
doing as a photographer is I'm capturing reflected light.
We are on a journey to bring the kindling of storytelling and the spark of creativity to fuel a fire of hope, resilience, and restoration for the well-being of the whole Earth community.
And then everything started glowing red. I turned around and the most vivid sunset I think I've ever seen at the coast starts erupting.
Join us every week on Sunday evenings to experience storytelling and the creative spirit in action. We will be joined by artists, ecologists, musicians, bioengineers, chefs, and poets as we come together to mend the gap between the human community and the natural world.
There's really no better way to overcome climate anxiety than to plant a tree.
For on this planet, we are all smaller bodies on a larger, beating, breathing planetary body who has much to teach us about living. And it's about time we started listening. Welcome to a new story for a new week, the Earth Story podcast. My name is Will Rand, and I am delighted that you are here. This week we are joined by Alrie Middlebrook and Sophie Chertok. Alrie is a garden designer, nonprofit leader, botanist, ecologist, and an avid hiker. She is an encyclopedic repository of every plant that she has ever encountered. Having recently retired as the executive director of the California Native Garden Foundation, she is turning her creative energies toward a new project called Build 25 that seeds Eat, Grow, Learn centers, which equip and empower local communities to tend to their native flora and meet their own life cycle needs. Sophie is a recent graduate of San Jose State University with a master's in urban planning and a focus in environmental planning. Her thesis surveyed urban gardens in San Jose, demonstrating how they can be the center of common life, where humans and plants learn to rely on one another. Alrie and Sophie share intergenerational wisdom that enriches their friendship, which is on full display during this conversation. I am glad that you are here. Let us all take a breath and begin. Alrie and Sophie begin by sharing moments from their lives when they realized that they had a profound connection with the natural world.
I have two answers. One is from my childhood. And it wasn't that I realized, it was that I was drawn to nature. I was curious and I wanted to immerse myself more in the world of plants. And so it was this curiosity of my childhood. I was raised as a Christian as a child, and so this anthropocentric view of life was something that propelled me, through my youth. But there was this spiritual connection and emotional connection that I had. So I did want to define that. Now, in terms of an intellectual time, a realization, that would be more about my reading of science and understanding the terms holobiont and biont, and how that was actually written about by a doctor named Lynn Margulis. Symbiosis as a source of evolutionary innovation. I read about holobionts and holobiomes. That was a huge breakthrough for me in my work. The holobiont is the system of all the interconnectedness of a host. So the host in my case would be a plant. And the plant has a relationship, with the soil, with all the elements and the sun and of course rain and all that. But the most significant relationship is that each species of plant within a holobiome has its own microbiome. And those microbiomes make up, the soil microbiology, because their microbes are relating to soil microbes. And it is that synergy that allows for a plant community or a local ecology to thrive. Then, of course, parallel with this, I was learning about human microbiome, and that we have 75-80% of our gut microbiome comes from soil microbes. And so it was this connection to soil microbiology through the individual species of plants' microbiome. I realized that the more biodiversity I could create in my gardens, and I've been a garden designer for almost 50 years, and I realized that my most important goal that was going to drive my process for the rest of my life was that I needed to up the ante in terms of the plant biodiversity that I was going to put in all my native gardens. And I've been designing native gardens since 1989. And I've been designing regenerative organic farms since 2013. And so it was that combination of the value of the ecological land management that I put at the foremost of my practice. Whenever I would design and we would build a native garden and build a regenerative farm or design a regenerative farm that complements it, because regenerative agriculture is ecology based. And so to get the local plant community, the number of species within a system, at this incredible level, that was to me the greatest contribution that humans could make, because we could restore nature on a level, because we've been disrupting it for so long that we're limiting more and more our native species, and in turn all the symbiotic relationships that the plants have with the pollinators and the animals. But the thing that we must remember is how much damage our work, what we're doing, is actually doing to us, because we are a part of nature. Now, one of the things that's so important about what we're doing today is that Sophie is included in this conversation, because one of the most important things that I'm doing is mentoring young people, especially, but anyone who wants to learn. But I'm very attracted to mentoring young people because they have more life left on the planet to bring about this change in literally how we see ourselves living on the planet.
My mother had a huge garden. When we moved to where I grew up, there was just like a lawn in the front, a lawn in the back, and then very immediately my parents decided to remove it and then put in, a huge garden that went all the way around the house, 360 degrees, and my mother designed it all. And so I always grew up seeing her in the garden every day, putting in a lot of work. My grandparents were also very passionate gardeners. I always saw them gardening all the time in France, in their home garden. So I think subconsciously I was influenced by that, and I was always outdoors and playing in the garden, playing in the yard. And my parents also were big hikers. Other similarity of nature lovers is, you go hiking a lot. So that was kind of, as I was growing up. And then when I was in high school, in one of my classes, we watched An Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore's documentary about the climate crisis. And then that was kind of my aha moment of, oh dear, we really need to do something about this. This is what I feel very passionate about. This is what I want to dedicate my career towards. So from then it kind of was just, went to study environmental studies at UC Santa Cruz, which is just such a gorgeous natural location with like the beach and then the mountains and the redwoods. It's just, I always felt like it was the best place to study the environment. Then I got to urban planning because I wanted to do environmental policy, but that was so large scale. So I think over time, the more classes I took, the more people I met, the more internships I did, I kind of refined it to like, okay, local level effects change the fastest, local government, urban planning. But then I meet Alrie and the nonprofit scene, and I'm like, oh my God, that's where it really is. The heart of the change is within the community at the individual level. So here I am.
And you've already sort of spoken to this, but could you share about your, from your own experience in the gardens and through your own life journey and just being in the natural world yourself, what has Mother Earth taught you through your life? What lessons have you do you look back on and realize that you were being cared for and taught by this earth that we live on?
I've come to realize that planet Earth, we are one system. Every living organism, all the elements, everything that makes the planet Earth what it is, we are it. And we are all related, and it is one system. And one of the profound things, I talked about holobionts and holobiome and the microbiology of the soil and our own gut microbiome. And that was a profound piece of knowledge that changed my career. The other thing is how our planet renews itself. Now that is another like jewel of what I was able to discover by living in California, where, we've got the North American plate and the Pacific plate coming together, and we have all these fault lines. And what I found out from my hiking was that, the most incredible plants and plant communities are here because these faults run the full length of our state. And so many of the pristine places that I hike are along fault lines because the soil is different and you've got so much more biodiversity, in serpentine soil. And it's getting a little technical here, but all this drives the other work that I do. And so what I found out is the planet actually renews itself just like, a chaparral community renews itself by fire, or we renew ourselves by moving or changing a job or getting a divorce or losing a loved one. I mean, these things, they're shocks, just like earthquakes or fires or any natural element. And then we start renewing our lives again. I'm going through that right now, with the retirement. But those relationships of understanding the planet renews itself too. And so when we see these natural phenomenons, happening around us, to me, it makes all of life and everything that happens much more balanced, that we make this connection with our mother. In everything that happens to us, there is a relationship that we can understand about just how our planet functions.
Tell us a bit about how you met each other.
It was very serendipitous because I don't know. I feel like this is where I'm meant to be at this moment in time. When I randomly found the community garden in my neighborhood, I didn't even find it. And then my roommate, he happened to be skateboarding by on a night where the gate was open and they were having a potluck, as they do on Monday nights. It's like a community social. Every Monday night, people bring food and meat, and it's multi-generational, multicultural. It's just such a great, thing that happens on a weekly basis to connect with your neighbors and your community. So he went and then came home, started raving about it, was like, Sophie, you would love this place. And so then I started going, became like a weekly volunteer on the Saturday mornings in the garden, and would go to the socials on the Monday night. So I was there like 2 days a week, and then, met Alrie there, and was just she just spoke so passionately, and she knew so much. And then there was all this talk that she might retire soon. And so I just feel so lucky that I was able to meet her right in the final year before, she resigned as the executive director. I just feel so lucky that I now get to live with her and be mentored by her. And I'm an apprentice and I'm working with her on a daily basis just so I can absorb, everything that's in that big brain of hers, because she's really accomplished and has done so much in Silicon Valley in the last 30 years, like truly is a pioneer in terms of, sustainable land use and, kind of fighting the unsustainable paradigm that the world has been stuck in for so long.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it was a year-long thesis project, research-based, but really was awesome because it wasn't so much, yes, I had to do a literature review and look at empirical studies and all that, but I would say my favorite part of the project was going out into the multitude of sites within San Jose, which is so urban, but then finding these pockets of like micro farms, community gardens, regenerative farms within a city. That's what really blew my mind, was how are we able to do this here? And so it started with CNGF, the California Native Garden Foundation, Alrie's nonprofit, was the heart and the start of my thesis. And it's what inspired me to then go out and meet the other community leaders that had started their own sites. But I felt so inspired by CNGF's mission because, unlike a lot of the other community gardens, CNGF is really focused on restoring the soil microbiome, restoring biodiversity, including a whole array of plant communities that are native to the Bay Area. The other community gardens are also doing great work, and it's very important. And a lot of them are, growing food for low-income minority communities here, which is also very important. And so my thesis really helped me kind of see the ecosystem on a broader level of like, what is everyone doing and how does it work together? And it just was so inspiring to go and hear from multiple different sites. I learned that there is power in diversity, and I think the diversity comes from all of the different nonprofits having their own mission and vision, but at the end of the day, they're all kind of connected to each other. They're all working towards the same goal, which is enhancing sustainability within San Jose for the community that lives here. And I think another finding from my thesis was that the city government is very disconnected from the community, although they have a similar goal, which is serving their population. And they're just not at the heart of the community. They're kind of more siloed away versus all of the nonprofits that are, boots on the ground, having weekly volunteer events, hosting weekly, or workshops and things like that. And I think what I saw with the city's community garden program is that they have no sort of educational programming. They have nothing to connect community members to each other at the gardens. People have to pay a membership fee of $150 a year to even be a part of the community garden. And then once they're there, they're just given a small plot, and then they say, you can garden here. But there's nothing really tying all of the different people who have a plot there together. People just come there to garden as individuals, versus the nonprofits, from what I saw, and was just, they do a really good job at being the connection and being a space that is activated and lively and brings people there, and people want to keep coming back there, to not only create a relationship with each other, but also create a relationship with the land. And I think that's really important if we're talking about, changing land use and becoming more sustainable.
Yeah, it really needs to be a direct experience. It's a physical, touching the soil, growing plants that produce food, or growing plants that produce medicine, or growing plants that produce medicine and food, or growing plants that, increase biodiversity and habitat value. It's all of those things together. And one of the things that was so important to me, and it is the core value, is that we really need to restore our local ecologies and copy Mother Earth in how she renews herself. And we need to renew our land use in the same way as Mother Earth does. And it's really that direct connection that this is a whole system, and we are a part of it. And you've got a planet, that's 4 billion years old. And this planet has been evolving this whole time to produce life. That's what this planet is about. It's about the abundance of life. And we've got it wrong because we are overly dominating. One species is overly dominating. And so we're squashing life. We're rubbing out life. And the only way that we can right this Earth ship is to go back and look, how does Mother Earth do this? And follow her recipe.
Yeah.
Don't try to change the recipe.
And the recipe is the symbiotic relationships within the ecosystem.
And our relationship to everything else that's alive.
Yeah.
And so that is what perpetuates this work. And that's why it's more important for me to hear Sophie talk and embrace what she has learned. And, I'm working with a few other young people right now in the same way. And I'm able to actually do more as retired than I could before. What is the acronym?
ELMTEK.
Yeah. Ours is ecological land management, and TEK is
Traditional
ecological knowledge. And so I came up with this ecological land management. We made a certificate when we taught these classes at the prison this last year. We taught 12-week class in ecological land management. That's learning about the native plant communities of your region, and then learning how to create a garden by the plant communities, because that's a system that evolves together. That's the basis of ecology, is a plant system. And then coupled with that, the second 12-week class was on regenerative organic agriculture. And why is regenerative organic agriculture the way that we can farm in cities to produce, 40% more food with 40% less resources and 40% less water? It's because it's all driven by local ecology. So you can't separate the two. If someone just wants to grow food, but they don't understand, preservation of local ecosystems, then they're not going to be growing food in the most sustainable, resilient way.
Build 25 is Elrie's next project. The California Native Garden Foundation was an early catalyst for the idea. Now it is time for it to be shared with more biotic communities.
We change the land use model, but also simultaneously, we must have workforce development to train young people how to actually design these eat, grow, learn centers or agri-hoods or eco-villages, whatever you want to call them, and then how to manage them. Because so much of it is about land management, because you get a grid in the city. You have a grid. And when you choose plants that are used to being in nature and can grow freely, to be confined by that grid is a challenge. It takes really careful management. And so that's why I'm still designing gardens, because I'm really interested in the long-term management. Okay, well, it sounds wonderful. We're going to follow Mother Earth. We're going to follow these rules of engagement that she has set up over 4 billion years. But we have to train people. And we have to build a community that understands this and wants to bring science and art and emotion and spirit together. So we know that we have to do 3 things all at once. Now, why land use? Because the way I've thought about it is we have the best way to do this, and we did this for 260,000 years. Humans, we were completing our life cycles by using all the resources that were within walking distance of where we were born. And that really did not change essentially until industrialization. And so we really have to think about how can we meet all of our life cycle needs close to where we live? What are our life cycle needs? Well, we know we have to eat. We know we need clean air. We know we need clean water. We need to be able to handle our waste. And that is the consumer waste. And then our own bodily waste. How we're going to manage water. How we're going to manage pollution. And then we have, our need for housing. We have a spiritual ecology need. We have a need for community. We have a need for education. And then we have a need for transportation, for energy. So all of those needs, if we really want to be challenged, and what's exciting about this is it changes everywhere you live, because the local ecology is different, the climate is different, the demographic is different. And so there's not one size. This is not globalization. It's the opposite of globalization. It's not one size fits all. And that's the difficulty that we're having now with how the direction that we've moved in. We have to go back and look at those 260,000 years where we did meet our life cycle needs. And now we have technology, we have a network where we can communicate, but it's not going to be the solutions for how we're going to live on the planet. That is a local thing, and it's local ecology driven.
Just a little weird thing about doing the podcast thing. I think because your phone's on the table, every time you tap on the table...
Oh, shit. Stop doing it, Alrie.
Alrie and Sophie share a story for all of us, no matter where we live. Listening to our local ecology and tending to the needs of the land beneath our feet is a part of the way forward.
And I've thought a lot about, different climates. Like you have a 4-season climate like New York City, or you have a subtropic climate like Florida, or you've got 4 seasons, in the southeastern United States, but they're milder. And then you've got the deserts and everything in between. And so it's really about building community around that and understanding that our first obligation is to protect the system that has created life and to learn what that system is where you live. and join other people who want to learn. Like there's always a native plant society in every state. And it's building community. And it's also, I would advise to engage with their local schools and see if the school has a garden. Do they have a native garden? Because our first goal is really to educate young children before 5 years old, because we can have more impact on their own gut microbiome. And that's going to affect their mental health and their physical health for the rest of their life. And so being able to reach young children in a school garden and to affect the change in how we educate our children to prepare for living a resilient and sustainable life. If you want to reduce your carbon footprint, each individual carbon footprint, this is the way to do it. Meet the life cycle needs close to where we live, because it is very doable. We start small, we build one garden at a time, one community garden at a time, one school at a time, and we build community and we work with young people as much as we can. But it is so possible to do this.
Alrie and Sophie tell stories of hope, restoration, and renewal. Their friendship is maybe the greatest example of this. We will hear more from them in the time to come. For now, you can find out more about the work of the California Native Garden Foundation at cngf.org. I am Will Rand, and this has been a new story for a new week, the Earth Story podcast. Your listening presence is a gift. You can follow us on Facebook or find us on the web at midpennearthstory.org. May you have courage in the week to come and know that this earth depends upon your unfolding story.